Jake Morrison stared at the strange message on his communication screen for the third time that morning. The letters seemed to glow with their own light, written in perfect English, but somehow different from anything he had ever seen before. His ship, the Liberty Dawn, floated quietly in space near the outer edge of human territory, and Jake had been expecting routine patrol reports, not an invitation to attend an alien princess wedding. The message came from the Zarathi Empire, a civilization that humans had only recently made contact with 6 months ago. The Zarathi were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most powerful and ancient races, ruling over hundreds of star systems with technology that made human achievements look like stone tools. They had never invited humans to any of their important ceremonies before. In fact, most humans had never even seen a Zarathi in person. Jake read the message again. Princess Zarath of the Golden Throne requested the honor of human presence at her bonding ceremony on Zerion Prime. The ceremony would determine her future mate through an ancient trial that had been performed for thousands of years. The invitation specifically asked for Captain Jake Morrison and a small diplomatic team to witness this sacred event. Dr. Lisa Chen walked into the bridge and noticed Jake's confused expression. She had been his science officer for 3 years and could read his moods better than anyone else on the ship. Her specialty was alien cultures, and she had been studying everything available about the Zarathi since first contact. "What's got? You looking like you've seen a ghost, Captain?" she asked while checking the navigation systems. Jake turned the screen toward her. "We just received an invitation to attend an alien princess wedding. The Zarathi want us there in 5 days." Lisa's eyes grew wide as she read the message. She had spent months trying to get any information about Zarathi customs and social structure, but the aliens had been very secretive about their internal affairs. "This is incredible, Jake. Do you realize what this means? We would be the first humans to witness a Zarathi royal ceremony. The diplomatic implications alone could change everything between our species." Lisa's excitement was obvious, but Jake felt more cautious about the whole situation. Commander Ryan Blake entered the bridge at that moment, carrying his daily security report. Ryan was a practical man who always looked for potential dangers in any situation. He had been Jake's security chief since the Liberty Dawn launched, and his job was to keep the crew safe from any threats they might encounter in deep space. "Good morning, Captain. Sensors are showing all clear in this sector." Jake showed Ryan the invitation. The security officer's expression immediately became serious as he read the details. "Captain, with all due respect, this feels like a trap. Why would they suddenly invite us to something so important? We barely know anything about their society or their intentions toward humanity." Lisa disagreed strongly. "Ryan, this could be exactly the breakthrough we need. The Zarathi have been polite but distant since first contact. Maybe they're ready to open up and share more about their culture. Think about what we could learn from a civilization that's been traveling between stars for millennia." Jake considered both perspectives while looking out at the stars through the bridge windows. The Liberty Dawn was a small exploration vessel with a crew of only 30 people, designed for peaceful scientific missions rather than military operations. If the Zarathi wanted to harm them, they certainly had the power to do so, whether the humans attended the ceremony or not. "Lisa, what do you know about this Princess Zarath?" Jake asked. His science officer immediately pulled up her research files on the portable computer she always carried. "Not much, unfortunately. The Zarathi keep their royal family very private. We know she's the heir to their throne and that she's considered one of the most intelligent members of their species. Some reports suggest she's been studying other civilizations, including humanity, but that's just speculation based on intercepted communications." Ryan crossed his arms and frowned. "Even if their intentions are good, Captain, we'd be completely out of our element. We don't know their customs, their laws, or what might offend them. One wrong move could cause a diplomatic incident that affects all of humanity." Jake understood Ryan's concerns, but he also felt the weight of the opportunity that Lisa described. Humanity was still new to the galactic community, and most alien species viewed them as primitive and unimportant. The Zarathi invitation might be a chance to prove that humans deserved respect and consideration from the more advanced civilizations. "All right, here's what we're going to do. Lisa, I want you to research everything available about Zarathi customs and protocol. Ryan, prepare a security assessment for visiting their homeworld. I'm going to contact Earth Command and get authorization for this mission. The next few days passed quickly as the crew prepared for their journey to Zerion Prime. Earth Command approved the mission with enthusiastic support, recognizing the potential benefits of improved relations with the Zarathi Empire. Lisa worked around the clock studying alien cultural patterns and trying to predict what they might encounter at the ceremony. Ryan organized security protocols and emergency procedures, though he admitted privately to Jake that their small ship would be helpless if the Zarathi decided to act hostile. The best they could do was be respectful guests and hope that the aliens' intentions were genuine. Jake spent his time reviewing first contact reports and trying to understand what had motivated the Zarathi to extend this invitation. The alien empire was known for being extremely traditional and conservative in their approach to other species. Something must have changed in their attitude toward humanity, but Jake couldn't figure out what that might be. As the Liberty Dawn approached Zerion Prime, Jake and his crew got their first close look at Zarathi architecture and technology. The planet's surface was covered with crystal spires that reached high into the atmosphere, connected by bridges of light that seemed to be made of pure energy. Ships moved through the air without any visible means of propulsion, and the entire world seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm like a massive living organism. The royal palace sat at the center of the largest continent, a structure so beautiful and complex that human eyes struggled to process all its details. It appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that changed color as the planet's twin suns moved across the sky. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions from the palace," Lisa reported from her station. "They're directing us to a landing platform specifically prepared for our ship." As they descended toward the palace, Jake noticed other vessels arriving from across the galaxy. Ships of designs he had never seen before, representing species and civilizations that existed only in human legends and speculation. The ceremony would clearly be attended by representatives from many different worlds. Jake took a deep breath as the Liberty Dawn settled onto the crystal landing platform. Whatever happened next would affect not just his crew, but potentially all of humanity's future in the galaxy. He had no idea that in a few short hours, his life would change in ways he could never have imagined. Jake stepped off the Liberty Dawn and felt the strange energy of Zerion Prime flowing through the crystal platform beneath his feet. The air itself seemed to shimmer with tiny lights that danced around the human visitors like curious fireflies. Dr. Lisa Chen walked beside him, her scientific equipment recording everything they encountered, while Commander Ryan Blake kept his hand near his sidearm, despite knowing that human weapons would be useless against Zarathi technology. A delegation of Zarathi nobles approached them across the platform, moving with a grace that made them appear to be floating rather than walking. Jake had seen pictures of the aliens before, but meeting them in person was completely different. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that looked like living crystal, constantly shifting through different colors that seemed to reflect their emotions or thoughts. The lead Zarathi introduced himself as Lord Vexnar, the royal protocol master. His skin glowed with a soft golden light as he spoke, and his voice had a musical quality that made even simple words sound like poetry. "Welcome, humans of Earth, to Zerion Prime. Princess Zarath awaits your presence at the ceremony preparation. Please follow me to your honored positions." As they walked through the palace corridors, Jake marveled at the architecture around them. The walls were transparent crystal that showed views of gardens and chambers existing in dimensions that seemed impossible. Streams of liquid light flowed along the ceiling like rivers, providing illumination that felt warm and natural despite coming from no obvious source. Other alien dignitaries filled the corridors, representing species from across the known galaxy. Jake recognized some from human databases, including the tall, insect-like Manthari and the floating, energy-based beings called the Voidborn. Many others were completely unknown to him, creatures of such strange appearance that his mind struggled to understand how they could exist. "Captain Morrison," Lord Vexnar said as they walked, "you honor us greatly with your presence. Princess Zarath has studied your species extensively and holds humans in high regard, despite what many others in the Empire believe about your youth as a civilization." Jake sensed both respect and condescension in the alien's tone. "We're grateful for the invitation, Lord Vexnar. This is an incredible opportunity for our peoples to understand each other better. They entered the Hall of Eternal Bonds, a vast chamber that took Jake's breath away. The domed ceilings seemed to show the actual cosmos, with real stars and nebulae moving slowly overhead. Thousands of seats were arranged in circles around a central platform where the ceremony would take place. Each section was designed for different species, with environmental controls that allowed creatures from various worlds to attend comfortably. Lord Vexnar led them to a special viewing area marked with symbols that Jake couldn't read but somehow understood meant honored guests. Lisa immediately began scanning everything with her equipment while Ryan evaluated potential threats and escape routes out of habit. The ceremony will begin when both sons reach their highest point, Lord Vexnar explained. The trial of worthiness has 3 parts, each designed to reveal the true nature of the candidates. Only one who passes all 3 tests can be chosen by the Crystal of Bonds to become Princess Zarath's eternal mate. Jake looked down at the central platform and saw a massive crystal formation that pulsed with inner light. The Crystal of Bonds was easily 20 feet tall and seemed to contain entire galaxies within its transparent structure. Ancient Zarathi symbols surrounded its base, and Jake could feel power radiating from it even at this distance. The candidates approach, Lord Vexnar announced, and the hall fell silent. Princess Zarath entered first, and Jake immediately understood why she was considered exceptional even among her remarkable people. Her crystal skin showed more colors than any other Zarathi he had seen, shifting through the entire spectrum as she moved. She wore robes that seemed to be made of condensed starlight, and a crown of living crystal that grew from her head like natural formations. Behind her came the suitors, each representing powerful factions within the galactic community. Prince Veltar of the Hegemony was a traditional Zarathi noble whose golden skin proclaimed his royal bloodline. Commander Zex of the Void Hunters wore armor of unknown metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Lord Kron of the Metal Worlds was more machine than organic being, his mechanical body clicking and whirring as he moved. The High Oracle materialized on the platform, literally appearing from thin air in a display of power that made several alien dignitaries gasp in surprise. The ancient Zarathi's skin glowed so brightly that looking directly at him was difficult, and his voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere when he spoke. We gather today to witness the trial of worthiness, as our people have done for 10,000 years. The Crystal of Bonds will choose the mate destined to stand beside Princess Zarath and help guide our empire through the challenges that lie ahead. The first test began immediately. Each candidate stepped forward to face the test of courage, which involved entering a psychic maze that would confront them with their deepest fears and greatest weaknesses. Jake watched as Prince Veltar disappeared into a shimmering field of energy that surrounded him like a bubble. Through the crystal displays that appeared in the air above the platform, the audience could see what each candidate experienced inside the test. Prince Veltar faced visions of the Empire falling into chaos and his people suffering without proper leadership. His courage was evident as he fought through scenarios designed to break his will and determination. Commander Zex encountered fears related to losing his identity and becoming weak like the lesser species he had spent his life conquering. The Void Hunter's test showed him being defeated by enemies he had always considered inferior, but he pushed through with grim determination and ruthless focus. Lord Kron's mechanical nature made his test different from the others. His fears centered around system failures and the possibility of his consciousness being deleted or corrupted. The Machine Lord faced these concerns with logical analysis and backup protocols, treating fear as simply another problem to solve. Lisa leaned close to Jake and whispered, "Notice how each test is designed specifically for the individual candidate. The crystal somehow knows their psychology and creates personalized challenges." The second test, the Trial of Wisdom, required the candidates to solve ancient riddles and puzzles that had challenged Zarathi scholars for millennia. Complex mathematical problems appeared in the air as three-dimensional holographic displays, and each suitor had to manipulate the equations through thought alone. Prince Veltar approached the problems with traditional Zarathi education, using meditation techniques and ancestral knowledge passed down through royal bloodlines. His solutions were elegant and showed deep understanding of his people's philosophical traditions. Commander Zex used tactical analysis and strategic thinking, treating each puzzle like a military problem to be overcome through superior planning and execution. His approach was more aggressive but equally effective at reaching correct answers. Lord Kron processed the challenges with mechanical precision, calculating thousands of possible solutions simultaneously until he identified the correct responses. His artificial intelligence gave him advantages in pure computational power that impressed even the High Oracle. As the trials continued, Jake found himself studying Princess Zarath more than the candidates. Something about her seemed different from the other Zarathi he had encountered. While they maintained formal dignity and emotional distance, she showed genuine interest in the various alien species attending the ceremony. Her skin colors shifted in patterns that suggested curiosity and warmth, rather than the cool superiority most of her people displayed. The final test approached, the trial of heart, where the crystal of bonds would examine each candidate's soul and determine their compatibility with the princess and their fitness to help rule the empire. This was the moment that would decide the future of the Zarathi throne and potentially affect the entire galactic political structure. Jake settled back in his seat to watch the climactic moments of the ceremony, having no idea that fate was about to thrust him into the center of events in ways that would shock everyone in the hall, including himself. The crystal of bonds began to pulse with increasing intensity as the final test commenced, its inner light growing brighter with each heartbeat. Jake felt a strange sensation in his chest, as if something inside him was responding to the crystal's energy. Dr. Lisa Chen noticed the readings on her equipment going wild, showing energy patterns unlike anything in human scientific databases. Prince Veltar stepped forward first for the trial of heart. The crystal's beam focused on him, and holographic images appeared showing his deepest motivations and desires. The display revealed his genuine love for the Zarathi people and his determination to preserve their ancient traditions, but also showed his rigid thinking and inability to adapt to changing circumstances. Commander Zex approached next, and the crystal's light turned darker as it probed his soul. The images that appeared showed his hunger for power and conquest, his view of other species as tools to be used rather than equals to be respected. Even the Zarathi nobles in the audience murmured with disapproval at what they saw. Lord Kron's examination produced the strangest results yet. The crystal seemed confused by his artificial nature, creating flickering displays that couldn't decide whether he possessed a soul at all. The mechanical being's logical systems and programmed loyalties were clear, but the deeper emotional connections the crystal sought were absent or impossible to detect. As the crystal finished examining the third candidate, its light began to fluctuate erratically. The High Oracle's glowing form became more intense as he tried to maintain control over the ancient artifact. But something was clearly wrong. The crystal's beam started sweeping randomly across the ceremonial hall, seeking something that wasn't among the chosen suitors. The crystal seeks, but does not find what it requires, the High Oracle announced, his voice showing strain for the first time during the ceremony. This has not occurred in our recorded history. The beam continued its search, passing over various alien dignitaries and causing gasps of surprise whenever it lingered on someone for more than a moment. Jake felt the strange sensation in his chest growing stronger, almost like a magnet pulling him forward. He tried to ignore it, assuming the alien environment was affecting his human physiology in unexpected ways. Princess Zarath stepped closer to the crystal, her skin showing colors that Jake was beginning to recognize as concern and confusion. "Ancient crystal, why do you reject those who have proven worthy? What do you seek that is not present among these noble candidates?" The crystal's response was to pulse even more violently, sending waves of energy throughout the hall that made several aliens shield their eyes or retreat from the intensity. Jake felt the pulling sensation become almost irresistible, as if every cell in his body was being drawn toward the ancient artifact. Commander Ryan Blake noticed Jake's distress and moved closer. "Captain, are you feeling all right? You look like you're about to pass out." Before Jake could answer, the crystal of bonds suddenly focused its entire beam directly on him. The light was so bright that everyone in the hall had to look away except for Jake himself, who found he could stare directly into it without any discomfort. The pulling sensation exploded into a feeling of completion, as if he had been searching for something his entire life, and had finally found it. The silence in the hall was absolute. Thousands of alien beings from across the galaxy stared at the human captain who had somehow been chosen by their most sacred artifact. The High Oracle's glow dimmed as he struggled to understand what had just occurred, while Princess Zarath's skin shifted through colors that Jake somehow knew represented amazement and hope. Prince Veltar was the first to break the silence, his voice filled with outrage. "This is impossible. The crystal has malfunctioned. A primitive human cannot be chosen over the noble suitors of our empire." Commander Zex drew closer to his weapons, his dark armor seeming to absorb even more light as his anger grew. "I will not be rejected in favor of a creature barely evolved from animals. The trial must be repeated with proper candidates." Lord Kron's mechanical voice added to the protests. "Logical analysis indicates system error. Human probability of compatibility approaches 0 based on available data." The hall erupted in chaos as different alien factions began arguing about what the crystal's choice meant. Some species that had been conquered or dominated by the Zarathi saw an opportunity to challenge the Empire's authority, while others feared that their own positions in the galactic hierarchy might be threatened by this unprecedented event. Through all the noise and confusion, Princess Zarath's voice rang clear and strong. "The crystal of bonds has never failed in 10,000 years of history. If it has chosen this human, then we must respect its wisdom, even if we do not understand it." The High Oracle raised his glowing hands to restore order. "Princess Zarath speaks truth. The crystal's choice cannot be disputed, but neither can it be accepted without proper consideration. Captain Morrison of Earth must undergo the same trials as the other candidates if he wishes to be considered." Jake found his voice at last, though his mind was still reeling from what had just happened. "I never intended to be a candidate. I came here as a diplomat to witness your ceremony, not to participate in it." "The crystal cares nothing for your intentions," Princess Zarath replied, and Jake noticed that her voice held a warmth that hadn't been present when she spoke to the other candidates. "It sees what it sees, and chooses what it chooses. The question now is whether you have the courage to discover why it has selected you." Dr. Lisa Chen leaned forward from her seat, her scientific mind racing to understand the implications. "Captain, this could be the most important moment in human history. Whatever the crystal saw in you, it represents an opportunity for our entire species." Commander Ryan Blake was more cautious. "Jake, you don't know what you'd be getting into. These aren't human customs or human laws. You could be trapped in an alien political system forever." Jake looked around the hall at all the alien faces staring at him with mixtures of curiosity, hostility, and expectation. Then his eyes met Princess Zarath's, and he saw something there that surprised him. Not the cold calculation he expected from an alien royal, but genuine interest, and perhaps even hope. "What would the trials involve?" he asked the High Oracle. "The same 3 tests that all candidates must face. The trial of courage, the trial of wisdom, and the trial of heart. If you fail any of them, you will be eliminated and the crystal will choose from among the remaining candidates." "And if I succeed?" Princess Zarath answered before the High Oracle could respond. "Then you would become my bonded mate and share in ruling the Zarathi Empire. You would gain authority over 300 star systems and billions of lives. But you would also gain the responsibility to protect and guide them." Jake felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Everything about the situation was impossible and terrifying, but something deep inside him felt drawn to the challenge. Maybe it was the crystal's influence, or maybe it was his own curiosity about what lay beyond the boundaries of human experience. "I'll do it," he said, and the hall exploded into chaos once again. Princess Zarath's skin shifted to colors that Jake somehow knew represented joy and anticipation. Then let the trials begin anew, with all 4 candidates competing for the right to stand beside the throne of Zerion Prime. Jake stepped onto the ceremonial platform, feeling the eyes of thousands of alien beings focused on him with varying degrees of skepticism, curiosity, and outright hostility. The crystal of bonds pulsed gently nearby, its light somehow reassuring, despite the overwhelming situation he found himself in. Princess Zarath watched from her position beside the High Oracle, her crystal skin showing colors that Jake was learning to read as encouragement and anticipation. The trial of courage began immediately as the High Oracle gestured for Jake to enter the psychic field that would test his deepest fears. Unlike the other candidates who had approached the test with formal dignity and preparation, Jake simply walked forward and stepped into the shimmering energy barrier without hesitation. The bay world around him dissolved into his worst nightmares made real. He saw Earth burning as alien fleets destroyed every human city, saw his crew dying because of decisions he had made, saw humanity enslaved and scattered across the galaxy as servants to superior species. The visions were so vivid that he could smell the smoke and hear the screams of billions of people. But instead of trying to overcome these fears through mental discipline like the Zarafi candidates had done, Jake did something unexpected. He embraced the terror and used it as fuel for his determination. Every image of human suffering made him more resolved to prevent such a future. Every vision of failure strengthened his commitment to succeed. "I'm afraid," he said aloud to the empty space around him, "but being afraid doesn't make me weak. It makes me careful. It makes me fight harder." The psychic maze seemed confused by his response, flickering between different scenarios as it tried to find something that would break his will. Jake pushed forward through the nightmares, not by conquering his fears, but by accepting them as part of himself and choosing to act despite them. When the test ended and he emerged from the energy field, the alien audience was buzzing with surprised conversations. No candidate had ever approached the trial of courage in such a way. Prince Veltar's skin showed colors of anger and disbelief. "He speaks to his fears like friends. This is not courage, it is madness." "Perhaps," Princess Zareth replied, "or perhaps it is a form of courage we have never understood." The trial of wisdom came next, and Jake faced the same ancient puzzles and riddles that had challenged Zarathi scholars for millennia. Complex mathematical equations appeared in the air as three-dimensional displays, problems that required deep understanding of physics, philosophy, and interdimensional theory. Jake stared at the first puzzle for several minutes while the alien audience waited impatiently. The other candidates had approached these challenges with vast knowledge accumulated over lifetimes of study, but Jake had only his human education and experience to draw upon. Instead of trying to solve the problems using alien mathematics and philosophy, Jake approached them from a completely different angle. When faced with the classic paradox of the infinite gateway, he didn't attempt to calculate the mathematical impossibilities involved. Instead, he asked a simple question. Why? Would anyone want to go through a gateway that leads nowhere? Sometimes the wisest choice is not to act at all. His answer caused a stir throughout the hall, because in 10,000 years of trials, no candidate had ever suggested that the gateway itself might be the wrong choice. For the next puzzle, a complex equation about the nature of time and consciousness, Jake applied human military logistics instead of abstract philosophy. "This looks like a supply chain problem," he said, manipulating the holographic display. "If you treat consciousness like cargo being moved through time, the solution becomes obvious." Each of his answers was completely different from traditional Zarathi thinking, yet they solved problems that had stumped alien scholars for centuries. His approach wasn't based on vast knowledge, but on practical thinking and the ability to see familiar patterns in unfamiliar situations. Dr. Lisa Chen watched from the diplomatic section with growing amazement. "He's not just solving their puzzles," she whispered to Commander Ryan Blake. "He's showing them entirely new ways to think about old problems." Commander Zex growled with frustration as Jake's unconventional solutions proved correct again and again. Luck and primitive thinking. He cannot possibly succeed at the final trial. Lord Crone's mechanical analysis was more thoughtful. Probability calculations suggest random chance is insufficient to explain consistent success. Alternative cognitive patterns may provide advantages in specific scenarios. The final test approached, the trial of heart, where the crystal of bonds would examine Jake's deepest motivations and determine his true compatibility with Princess Zareth and the responsibilities of ruling an empire. This was the moment that would either validate the crystal's original choice or reveal that it had made some kind of error. Jake stepped forward as the crystal's light focused on him once again. Unlike the other candidates who had maintained formal composure during their examinations, Jake felt completely overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. The crystals seemed to be looking through his memories, his emotions, his very soul, with an intimacy that was both terrifying and strangely comforting. The holographic displays that appeared above the platform showed Jake's life in ways that surprised even him. His childhood on Earth, his training as a starship captain, his deep love for his crew, and his responsibility for their safety. But the crystal also revealed things Jake had never admitted to himself. It showed his loneliness despite being surrounded by people, his secret fear that humanity was too small and insignificant to matter in the vast galaxy, his desperate hope that his species could find their place among the stars without losing what made them human. The crystal displayed his prejudices too, his initial assumption that alien species were fundamentally different from humans, his struggle to see them as individuals rather than exotic creatures. But then something remarkable happened. As the crystal continued its examination, Jake's perspective began to shift in real time. He started to see the Zarathi not as superior beings to be feared or inferior beings to be pitied, but as people facing the same basic challenges that humans faced. They wanted security for their families, meaning in their lives, and hope for their future. Princess Zarath watched the displays with growing wonder as Jake's emotional growth played out before the entire assembly. His willingness to change his worldview, to admit his mistakes and limitations while still maintaining his core values, created a resonance with the crystal that grew stronger with each passing moment. The crystal's light reached a crescendo as it revealed the final truth about Jake's character. Despite all his fears and uncertainties, despite being thrown into an impossible situation on an alien world, he genuinely cared about doing the right thing. Not just for humanity, but for all the beings who might be affected by his choices. When the trial ended, Jake staggered slightly as the crystal's influence withdrew. The hall was completely silent as everyone processed what they had witnessed. Jake had not only passed all 3 trials, but had done so in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about wisdom, courage, and worthiness. The High Oracle's voice carried a note of awe. In 10,000 years of trials, no candidate has ever shown such capacity for growth during the examination itself. The Crystal of Bonds has chosen well. Prince Veltar's formal protest died on his lips as he saw the clear evidence of Jake's worthiness displayed for all to see. Commander Zex stepped back with grudging respect, recognizing qualities in the human that his warrior culture valued. Lord Kron simply calculated new probability matrices based on the unexpected data. Princess Zarath moved forward, her skin showing colors Jake now recognized as joy and deep satisfaction. Captain Morrison, you have proven yourself worthy by the most ancient standards of our people. But the question remains, do you choose to accept the responsibilities that come with this honor? Jake looked out at the assembled representatives of hundreds of worlds and species, then back at Princess Zarath. He thought about his crew, about humanity's future, about the strange path that had led him to this moment. The crystal's choice no longer seemed like an accident, but like destiny finally revealing itself. I accept, he said, and the galaxy would never be the same. The moment Jake accepted his role as Princess Zarath's chosen mate, alarms began sounding throughout the Crystal Palace. The ceremonial celebration was interrupted by urgent communications from Zarathi fleet commanders reporting attacks on the outer system defenses. The Shadow Collective had chosen this moment of vulnerability to launch a massive assault on Zerion Prime. Jake had heard whispers about the Shadow Collective during his diplomatic briefings, but the full scope of the threat only became clear as emergency reports flooded the Royal Command Center. These weren't ordinary raiders or rival empires, but something far worse. The Shadow Collective consisted of species that had been consumed by darkness, literally drained of life and converted into tools of destruction that spread across the galaxy like a plague. Princess Zarath's skin shifted to deep purples and blacks. As she received the battle reports, colors Jake was learning indicated fear and urgent concern. They attack now because they know our defenses are focused on ceremony rather than warfare. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. The High Oracle's glow dimmed with worry. Our fleets are scattered across the Empire on diplomatic missions. The Home Defense Force alone cannot repel an assault of this magnitude. Jake studied the tactical displays showing enemy movements and felt his military training take over. The attacking forces were using standard pincer tactics, trying to overwhelm the defenders through superior numbers and coordinated strikes, but their formation showed weaknesses that human strategic thinking could exploit. "Princess, may I make a suggestion?" Jake stepped forward, knowing he was overstepping every protocol, but feeling the urgency of the situation. "Your ships are fighting defensively, trying to protect every asset at once. That's exactly what the enemy expects." Zarath looked at him, with surprise and growing interest. "What would you do differently, Jake Morrison?" "Concentrate our forces for a decisive counterattack instead of spreading them thin across the entire system. Let them think they're winning while we prepare to hit their command structure." Jake manipulated the holographic display to show his proposed strategy. Human military doctrine calls this a strategic withdrawal followed by concentrated force application. The Zarathi military commanders initially resisted Jake's suggestions, arguing that human tactical knowledge was too primitive to be useful against such an advanced enemy. But Princess Zarath overruled their objections, recognizing that conventional thinking had failed to stop the Shadow Collective's previous victories. Working together, Jake and Zarath coordinated a defense that combined human adaptability with Zarathi technology in ways neither species had considered before. Jake's understanding of improvised logistics helped optimize supply lines, while his experience with smaller ship tactics provided new approaches to fleet maneuvering. The real breakthrough came when Jake suggested using the ceremonial ships that had brought alien dignitaries to the wedding as decoy targets. Most of these vessels had minimal weapons but impressive sensor packages, perfect for confusing enemy targeting systems and drawing attacks away from the real warships. "Your people think in straight lines," Jake explained to the assembled commanders. "The Shadow Collective expects that because it's how civilized species usually operate. But humans learned to fight dirty when we couldn't fight fair." Princess Zarath coordinated the implementation of Jake's strategies while he worked directly with individual ship captains, teaching them hit-and-run tactics that human pirates had perfected centuries ago. The combination of Zarathi firepower and human cunning began turning the tide of battle in ways that surprised everyone, including Jake himself. Dr. Lisa Chen found herself reassigned to work with Zarathi scientists, sharing human research techniques that helped them analyze Shadow Collective technology for weaknesses. Commander Ryan Blake coordinated security for the palace while training Zarathi guards in human close combat techniques that didn't rely on advanced technology. The battle raged for 3 days, but the combined human Zarathi